All right, we're going to get started. Thank you so much again for joining our first Introduction to CivicSpark Fellow Recruitment webinar. For those of you who just joined us, my name is Kristen and I'm the CivicSpark Senior Project Manager, and I'm going to be walking you through an overview of the program today. So at any point throughout the webinar, if you have any questions, please just shoot them through the question bar at the side of your screen. Likewise, if there are any glitches with technology, which is bound to happen at some point, please just chat into the question bar to let me know, and we can hopefully get things sorted out. So to give you an overview of what we're going to be discussing today, we're going to start with what is CivicSpark? What do we do? What does the program structure? Well, from there, we're going to talk a little bit about CivicSpark's impact so that you can see what you might be able to accomplish as a CivicSpark Fellow, and also what it means to be a CivicSpark Fellow. We'll talk a little bit about what your day-to-day would look like and the work that you would be doing throughout the year. From there, we're going to talk about recruitment. So if you're here, you're likely interested in applying to be a fellow. So we'll talk through the timeline, the requirements, and what the process looks like if you go through recruitment with us. And then at the end, we'll have plenty of time to answer any questions. I'm also joined by CivicSpark's Operations and Compliance Associate, Ariadna Hernandez. And Ariadna was a CivicSpark Fellow in 2014-15 and has been on staff with us for over 2 years here. So she's an excellent resource and will be here throughout to answer questions as well. So just wanted to say hi.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so we're going to kick it off now with what is CivicSpark. So as a big picture, CivicSpark is a Governor's Initiative AmeriCorps program dedicated to building capacity for local governments to address a number of community resilience issues. So for those of you who have been interested in CivicSpark before, you know that in the past we've been primarily focused on climate and water. This year we are expanding our scope to not only address climate change and water resource management, but also we have a new program track this year focused on addressing access to opportunities in our communities. So as we go through, I'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but at a high level, we're going to be adding additional projects focused on affordable housing, rural broadband, and alternative transportation. So as an AmeriCorps program, for those of you who are not familiar with AmeriCorps, we are a service program that's dedicated to improving the local community's needs. And there are a lot of AmeriCorps members, I should say, serving across the country, about 80,000 a year. And the 2018-19 service year will be AmeriCorps' 24th year. So if you join CivicSpark and complete the program, you'll join over 1 million alumni across the country of AmeriCorps. And that's a great network to be involved in, as well as the CivicSpark network. And CivicSpark, in addition to working with local governments on a number of capacity building issues, it's also a great opportunity for fellows to make a direct impact in the community while also gaining valuable professional experience. And we'll talk about some of the trainings that we provide, but this is a really hands-on experience for you to not only make significant contributions in a local government setting, but also work towards specific professional development goals that you set out at the start of the service year. So CivicSpark, I want to talk through our mission and our vision statement to give you a little bit more of a sense of what we're hoping to accomplish as a program. So our mission is, through national service, CivicSpark contributes to a more resilient and just California by building local government capacity to address both entrenched and emerging issues, serving as a social purpose career accelerator for future leaders, that's you all, and fostering lasting and authentic community engagement. So as we'll talk about in a few slides, all CivicSpark Fellows work on volunteer engagement projects in addition to their local government projects. And our vision that we're hoping to accomplish through our work is to envision a California of vibrant communities where our local governments and leaders are empowered and equipped to proactively serve the needs of all community members. So that's twofold. That's seeing that you all are working with our local governments to make sure that they're better equipped to tackle these major issues, but also we see you all being the future leaders of this movement, going out into the community and making change for many years to come. So now that you have the context of CivicSpark, I want to talk through the partners of the program. So CivicSpark is managed by the Local Government Commission. We're a nonprofit based in Sacramento that's been around for almost 40 years. We work on a number of smart growth issues, sustainability issues, but the Local Government Commission as an organization really focuses on championing local governments who are or who want to be sustainability leaders, and really working with the folks at the local government level excuse me, to advance policies, implement solutions, and connect leaders across the state and across the nation. So as CivicSpark Fellows, you would all be employees of the Local Government Commission and would work closely with Local Government Commission staff throughout the course of your service year. And CivicSpark is managed in partnership with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research as well. So as I mentioned on the first slide, CivicSpark is a Governor's Initiative program. So that's a great place for us to be in. Each governor gets to choose a AmeriCorps program that they feel really closely aligns with the goals of their administration. CivicSpark Climate, when it came on board, was selected as a Governor's Initiative program, as was CivicSpark Water. And so that has really created a great long-term relationship with us and the Governor's Office of Planning and Research. We share a lot of best practices and information with them that fellows share from on the ground. And you all will also get the benefit of working with Governor's Office of Planning and Research staff and getting some technical assistance from OPR. But in addition to the Local Government Commission and OPR, CivicSpark is really a partnership between a number of other players as well. First and foremost, the Corporation for National and Community Service is the federal agency that manages all national service programs, including AmeriCorps. And in California, AmeriCorps is managed through California Volunteers, which is the state agency that administers all service programs in California. So we work very closely with California Volunteers in particular on funding and program implementation and policies and procedures. Some other key players, obviously, are AmeriCorps Fellows, potentially you all, folks with a four-year degree, relevant experience in the field, and are really working with a number of local agencies, organizations, each other across the state. And then last but not least, our local partners. So in addition to hiring a number of fellows, we're also working right now to recruit project partners across the state. And these are cities, counties, local or regional agencies, NGOs, other collaboratives, really a wide variety of folks who are working with fellows to implement these projects. And they host fellows on site, and also will be supervising the fellows on project work on a day-to-day basis. So I want to give you a little bit of a sense of, we talk about CivicSpark and we mentioned that it's a great program, but what does it actually mean? I want to talk to you a little bit about the impacts that CivicSpark has had throughout California over the past few years. So right now we are in our 4th service year, but in the first 3 completed service years of CivicSpark, fellows have provided at this point, almost 300,000 hours of service to 140 public agencies, 300 projects, and have really supported a very wide range of actions. So I included a bunch of numbers up there, but this is only a very small snapshot of the work that CivicSpark Fellows have done over the past few years. Just to give you a sense, 267 water monitoring surveys and reports, 56 greenhouse gas inventories, 76 community workshops, 155 energy reports and benchmarking assessments. So this is pretty substantial work, and this is an example of the type of projects that you'd be able to work on as a CivicSpark Fellow. So as I mentioned, a key part of CivicSpark is also working with communities on volunteer engagement. So over the past few service years, fellows have directly engaged almost 16,000 community members, and over 95% of our completed projects to date have met or exceeded goals. So in joining CivicSpark, you'll be joining a program with a great history of making great impact in the community, and afterwards you'll be joining almost 300 alumni across the state and the country working on these issues. So how CivicSpark is structured, as I mentioned, we have 3 thematic tracks. Climate has 50 fellows, water has 20 fellows, and our new program track, Opportunity Access, will also have 20 fellows this year. And all of our fellows are placed together in groups of 3 to 20 in about 8 regions across California to implement these different projects throughout the service year. So we are spread out from the greater LA area all the way up to Eureka, throughout the Central Valley, Sacramento, San Francisco, Sierra Nevada region, and down the Central Coast. So we will be soon updating our website with the project partners for 2018-19. But in the meantime, you can go on our website and you can click through our previous service years to see a little bit more about the work that fellows have done and where fellows have served over the past few years. So now that you've seen that context, I want to talk a little bit about what CivicSpark would mean for you all. What does your day-to-day look like, and what would life as a CivicSpark fellow be? So I mentioned that all of our fellows are separated into regions. So we want to make sure that there are opportunities for collaboration and thought sharing. So all of our climate, water, and opportunity access fellows will be sorted into regions together, where you will receive support from a regional coordinator who is a LGC staff member or a close contact who provides day-to-day support, training, and a number of other services to you all throughout the service year. The trainings that the RCs provide are really varied. We'll cover a number of different topics. And in addition to those topics that you'll be receiving support on the ground, all of our fellows in different tracks will also be receiving hands-on training for the particular projects that you're working on. And depending on the track and depending on the placement, you'll either be placed in your office as an individual or with a small team of fellows working on projects together. But no matter whether you're individually or placed in a team, all of our fellows will be in a regional group that you'll be interacting with pretty regularly throughout the service year. And when we say service year, the length of that is 11 months, and fellows serve at least 1,700 hours over the course of 11 months. And that's broken down into a number of different buckets. So as you'll see on the screen, the area where you're going to be spending the most time throughout the service year is on your service project, and that's your climate, water, opportunity access project in your community. And that'll be about 1,300 to 1,400 hours of service. In addition to that, your volunteer engagement project will be anywhere from 100 to 150 hours, and you'll also be training for about 150 hours as well. So your work is pretty varied, as you'll see. You're going to be supporting a number of different initiatives throughout the year, but if you're committing to be a CivicSpark fellow, be prepared to serve for an 11-month period. And the projects that fellows will be doing, you're going to be taking ownership of a lot of different things, gaining expertise, experience, and also building a strong network throughout the service year. So we really ask that fellows come on board being ready to work on a number of things. You definitely need to be adaptable to jump into CivicSpark. And when I want to talk a little bit more about the different goals and processes that make up that very varied workload. So your service projects could fall into a number of different categories. They can either be research, planning, or implementation. But all of our fellows will be working on the same roughly 4-step process that includes a gap assessment. So you're going to go in, you're going to work with the local contacts, and you're going to identify what the greatest needs are in the community. And through that process, you're going to define your project scope, and then from there, actually begin your step 2, which is implementation of your service project. And once your project is up and running, if we want to build long-term capacity to work on these issues, we need to make sure that there are folks who are engaged and can help be the boots on the ground to continue this work even after the service year is completed. So that's where our step 3 comes in, our volunteer engagement project. So you'll see on the right side of your screen some photos from service days and volunteer engagement projects that fellows have run in the past. But these projects are opportunities for you to go in, take a leadership role, and really ensure that you have community members engaged in supporting the work that CivicSpark does in your community. And finally, at the end of the service year, you'll be working on transitioning expertise either to a new fellow or to the department members that you've been working with throughout the year. So again, we really want to make sure that the work you're doing has long-term impacts, and you're not just, the work doesn't end with you. We really want to make sure that it continues for years to come. So with that context of what CivicSpark is, I want to talk a little bit about the recruitment process. So as you've seen, our application is going to be opening on April 2nd, and I'll talk through in a few slides what that application entails. But our priority deadline is June 1st. If you are seriously considering CivicSpark this year, I would encourage you to apply as soon as possible within that window, and definitely no later than June 1st. We really want to ensure that we have plenty of time to recruit and speak to you all over interviews before the service year starts. So what the interview process entails, as you'll see, it's a pretty intense process. We get about 500 applicants a year, and it takes us a while to get that down to the 70 to 90 fellows that we'll have in our cohort. So that starts with an initial phone interview with one of our staff members, talking a little bit about the program, getting to know you, and getting to know why you're interested in CivicSpark. From there, you'll go into a second longer interview, which is typically in person or via Skype, where we'll talk a little bit more about your specific skills and how they relate to the various projects that we're offering throughout the service year. And if you're selected to move on past the second interview, you'll be referred to a particular region and project partners within that region for a final matching interview with those project partners. So like the second round interview, the local interviews are ideally in person or via Skype, but that is something that we will organize all the details with if you make it to that point in the process. But if you get through all those interviews and you're selected to be a fellow, congratulations. Orientation begins the first week of September. It'll be beginning the Tuesday after Labor Day. And after training for a number of days with the rest of the cohort, you'll actually begin your service work in the region on September 11th. So talking a little bit more now about what we're looking for in CivicSpark Fellows. I'm so sorry that for some reason the photos got a little grainy here, so apologize for that. But what we're looking for in fellows, so there are some requirements that are AmeriCorps and some requirements that are for CivicSpark. So AmeriCorps requires that all AmeriCorps members be citizens, national or lawful permanent residents of the United States, and you must take and pass a Department of Justice, state, FBI, and National Sex Offender Public Registry background check prior to service. So those are all things that we'll be providing information on, but we do just want to make that known. And if you have any questions about those requirements, please reach out to us. So in addition to those AmeriCorps requirements, CivicSpark has a number of additional requirements as well. So as I mentioned before, all fellows must have a 4-year degree, and you need to be able to commit to the full 11 months of service. Beyond that, you also need to have the capability to work in a professional office setting. So as I've mentioned, CivicSpark Fellows are working with local governments, and in general, these are more bureaucratic environments than a lot of folks are used to working in. So you need to be comfortable working in a 9-to-5 environment in a government setting. And along with that, we need strong written, both verbal and strong communication, I should say, both verbal and written, as well as teamwork skills. You're going to be working with the fellows in your region, with the folks in your office all the time. We have a lot of group projects that folks work on. So being comfortable working in a team is something that we're definitely looking for. And in addition, because these projects are not just entry-level projects, we require that folks have some subject area coursework or professional experience in the field that you're looking to serve in CivicSpark. You want to make sure that you know these issues and are ready to jump in and start working on them when you become a fellow. So the benefits of the program. So all of our CivicSpark fellows receive a $16,000 living allowance, which is spread evenly over 11 months. It's paid out in biweekly stipends, and there's a possibility for a slight cost of living adjustment depending on the region, which is why it says $16,000 plus there. But that's to say you're not getting paid a lot to do this work, so you need to be ready and willing to work on that limited stipend throughout the course of the service year. That being said, if you successfully complete the term of service, fellows will be eligible for a $5,920 Siegel Education Award, which can either be used to go to grad school or pay off existing student loans. Throughout the term of service, fellows will receive forbearance on existing student loans, as well as repayment of any interest that accrues during the service year. And in addition, fellows are typically eligible for SNAP or food stamp benefits. Everyone will be offered health insurance, and if necessary, child care assistance will be available for qualifying fellows. And then a non-material benefit, just the network development that you're going to get working in this program is pretty substantial. Our fellows work with a lot of different high-level folks at the local level. You'll be meeting speakers throughout all the different events of the year. You've got a great network of 300 alumni to tap into, as well as, at this point, about 200 project partners who we've worked with, and those folks are all there willing to talk to you about the field, the work that they're doing. So the network that you're going to come out of CivicSpark with is pretty substantial. So with all of that, I want you all to think about if CivicSpark is right for you. So to better understand that, we're going to talk about what CivicSpark is and what it's not. So what CivicSpark is, first and foremost, this is an opportunity to build your skill sets in a relevant field. So we know that our fellows are coming into the program with a wide variety of skills and experiences, but you have to be committed to learning and growing throughout the course of the service year. You have a number of mandatory trainings that fellows participate in, so we need folks who are excited for that opportunity and are really willing to go through that training curriculum throughout the year. This is an entry point into the community resilience, climate, water, housing fields, and this is the opportunity to work on higher level tasks and you'll get in a typical entry-level job. So with that comes additional responsibilities. You might need to work independently. You're going to need to do a lot of problem solving, and there's definitely not a lot of hand-holding in your project work. So you have to be comfortable training and getting the guidance, but also working independently on work throughout the year. And this is also, as I mentioned, a chance to build strong networks and also make an impact on your community. What CivicSpark is not is a typical high-service AmeriCorps program. So what I mean by that is typically when folks hear of AmeriCorps, they think of somebody going out and planting trees, doing creek cleanups, working outdoors with the community, and that is not what CivicSpark is. As I mentioned before, you're working in a local government office in a bureaucratic setting, so you need to be comfortable working about 40 hours a week in an office. So there are opportunities through your volunteer engagement project, through some service days to do hands-on work, but that is a pretty small portion of your work. So you need to be excited and ready to work in an office environment. So with that being said, if you're still interested in CivicSpark, we're going to close by talking about the application process and what that looks like for you all. So as I mentioned, the application opens on April 2nd, so it's not available on the website yet, but I'll talk through now the different pieces that the application contains so that you can start preparing your information. You will need to upload a one-page PDF resume. I really want to emphasize one page. We get 500 applicants a year, so it's a lot of information to read through, so we really want to make sure that you're highlighting the most relevant pieces of your opportunity when you're submitting your application. You'll list your educational background, so where you completed your undergrad, and if applicable, your grad school education, as well as your major and focus. We will ask that you all provide 2 references. And you do not need to submit letters of rec. We will actually be reaching out to your references to contact them to ask a number of questions. So we ask that you please give your references a heads up that they will be contacted by the CivicSpark program, but there's no need for you to submit any letters of recommendation as part of the application process. We will want your skills and interests. So as I mentioned, we've got a lot of partners that we'll be matching fellows with, and part of that process is taking your skills, taking your background, and also the areas where you want to grow, and matching that up with the projects that we have for the 2018-19 service year. So it's important to think critically about what you're most interested in and where your strongest skill sets are, so that'll help us best match you with the project. We'll also need your regional preference, so we want to know where you are willing to serve. And I really encourage folks to be very critical about this. It is really hard for us when we have folks who will apply and say, I'm interested in serving absolutely anywhere. And then when it comes down to it, they decide, you know what, I really do not want to live in this region. And that's hard for our project partners if we're routing you there already. So please, when you're putting down your regional preferences, be sure to only list areas that you would absolutely be willing to move to in a drop of a hat if you were offered a position in CivicSpark. We will ask for your track preference, and that's, again, climate, water, or opportunity access. If you do not have a specific preference, that's fine. We can consider you for all 3 of our program tracks. We understand that there are a lot of similarities between the work, and a lot of our fellows have pretty diverse interests. But if you do have a specific track preference, we would love to know that. And then last but not least, there are a number of essay questions that we'll ask our fellows to complete throughout the course of the service year, throughout the course of the application. We'll mostly be asking about your background, your interest in CivicSpark, your service experience, your volunteer engagement experience, and what you hope to contribute throughout the course of the service year. So it's not a super long application, but it does take time. So encourage you to do some work ahead of time, and again, try to submit your applications as soon as possible once we open on April 2nd. And the last thing that I'll say is that CivicSpark is on Facebook. If you want to know a little bit more about the day-to-day of a CivicSpark fellow, I really encourage you to follow us on Facebook with the link provided, and we'll be following up and giving you these slides afterwards. But we do a weekly Fellow Friday where we feature fellows, and they'll give short excerpts about what their day-to-day looks like, why they like CivicSpark, and we also will be sharing updates and more information about recruitment on the Facebook page throughout the next couple of weeks and months. So if you have not already, please like us on Facebook to learn more about the program. And so with that, I will stop talking, and I will open it up to you all for any questions that you have. Okay, so the first question that we have are lots of fellows, are there opportunities for fellows to create their own projects, or will we most likely be continuing former fellows' projects? So that's a great question, Maggie. It's a variety of different things. So we have some projects every year that are brand new and have not had a fellow there before. And I should say that even for fellow projects that are brand new, there's a scope that exists. The gap assessment process will be you working to refine that scope and hopefully, I refine and identify goals. But you're not completely creating a project from scratch. I do want to clarify that. But every year there are also a number of projects that former fellows have worked on. This is something that we could also chat with you about during the interview process and tell you where there have been fellows before and where there haven't. There are obviously a lot of benefits to both situations, but we're a pretty big mix. I'm looking at Ariadna. Do you happen to know how many of our projects every year are returning project partners?
I would say probably about a third to half. But I think it's a little more. It's kind of in between third to half of our project partners.
That's great to know. And obviously, all 20 of our Opportunity Access partners are going to be brand new. Those are all new projects. So if you want to work on something that's brand new, that is definitely going to be a great opportunity for that. So another question is, can you speak a little bit more about what projects might look like in the Opportunity Access position? So that's a great question. As you'll see on our website, all the project examples that are there are for our climate and water projects. Opportunity Access is going to be a variety of different things. I'll say again, the 3 main focus areas are affordable housing, rural broadband access, and alternative transportation. So overall, we are looking to go to communities and address issues that are limiting community members' ability to access opportunities and opportunities for growth and development and advancement. And we see that broadband, housing, and transportation access are three main areas to really work on in that space. So what those projects are going to look like, it might be working to do a community survey to see what the major barriers are to accessing public transportation. You might be working with the planning agency to streamline permitting for affordable housing. You might be working to do a survey on broadband access in communities and going out to rural areas and doing surveys and actually seeing whether or not residents have access to broadband and what impacts a lack of broadband are having on their lives. You might be actually doing something that's more implementation focused and doing a planning project around a new transit hub. The list goes on and on and on. I think there are so many different opportunities, and we're still working to finalize the project partners for this space. But I think if you're interested in that lens of increasing access to opportunities in communities, all of those projects are really going to be touching on that issue in a really tangible way. So our next question is, if you apply sooner rather than later, does that expedite the interviewing and selection process? So we will be likely doing our initial interviews before the priority deadline. We won't be passing anybody along to partners likely before the priority deadline, but we will begin interviewing sooner rather than later. So the sooner you apply, the sooner you will be able to do your screening interviews and potentially your second round interviews with candidates, with staff members.
One other thing, as we start sending people along to project partners, if you end up applying later than the June 1st priority deadline and you're really interested in a project and it's already kind of going through the phase of interviewing other candidates and they select another candidate, you may not have the option or choice to potentially have that as one of your preferred projects.
That's a great point. So just to second that, we fill our project partners on a rolling basis. So if you're applying late in the process, you might only have a few projects to choose from, or a project track might be full. So unfortunately, we can't hire for all of our positions at the exact same time. So again, if you apply before the June 1st deadline, you should have access to all the different project options. But if you apply later than that, chances are spots will be full by the time some spots would be full, I should say, by the time you apply. So the next question that we have is, if a potential fellow lists preference for a track and is not chosen for that track, will they be eligible for the remaining tracks? Yes, if you express interest in potentially, during your interview, even if you didn't put it on your application, if you express interest in other tracks, then we would be happy to share you with other tracks at that point. We, every year, will have folks who, have one top project in a region, and if they don't get it, we will go back to you and say, what are your preferences? And we try to work with fellows to match you as best as possible. So there's a lot of back and forth that goes on between us and candidates during the interview process. And if you're interested, we'd love to make those opportunities available for you if your top choice doesn't work out. So next question is, have any fellows worked on projects that touch on policy and legislation in the state? Is it possible through the CivicSpark Fellowship? So I will say that one thing that is tough for CivicSpark as an AmeriCorps program is we're not allowed to work on advocacy specifically. So we have to be careful about working on policy, and for that reason, most projects do not touch on policy, particularly at the state level. Because of our local focus. I will say, though, that there are some fellows that are working on implementing policy at the local level. Folks aren't writing policy, but we've had fellows work to implement local building energy ordinances, or work on greenhouse gas reduction requirements. And that's really, CivicSpark came out of the idea that the state has a lot of really forward-thinking policy needs that really fall to local governments to implement. So in that sense, our fellows are working on some state policies, but they're not writing them. It's mostly in the implementation phase. So if you have any other follow-up questions, feel free to shoot me a note or ask another question here, and I can clarify more. So our next question is, what are some examples of volunteer engagement? So volunteer engagement projects are super varied. We have a whole project repository that we can share with you all once you begin the service term. But it is everything from internship programs to running tree planting drives in communities, working to do a community outreach program that relates to one of your projects in your community. It can be either connected to your service project, or it can be completely separate and just, have an impact on your community. But we don't have super strict requirements for what it looks like. We really want to give this to fellows as an opportunity to develop a project that you're excited about. I would say we've had fellows do gleaning projects, so going around and collecting fruit from trees in neighborhoods. We've had folks set up bicycle booths at county fairs and educate community members about bike safety and increasing bicycle usership in communities. It's so varied, and I think that's one of the really exciting things about volunteer engagement is how varied the projects can be. So another question is I got a question if partner organizations will also provide a stipend in addition to the yearly allowance. That is something that's not, as far as I know, not allowed by AmeriCorps. You will receive your education award in addition to your stipend if you complete the program, but the stipend amount is fixed. There aren't, other than the cost of living adjustment, I should say, so there are no other stipend add-ons on top of that amount. So, yeah. Oops. So the next question is, are the newer housing projects, in addition to water and climate, specific to one region location, and what would those housing projects involve? So those are going to be statewide likely. I mentioned some examples of these before, but primarily focused on increasing affordable housing in communities and all of that, the different forms that could take. So we don't know exactly where those projects will be yet. We don't know if they'll be available in all of our different regions, but likely you'll see opportunities to work on those housing projects in a number of areas across the state. We got a question is which regions are most expensive to live in. That depends. I think in general, fellows have seen that urban areas tend to be more expensive in LA and the Bay Area. That being said, those are our two largest regions, and we have about, almost 60 fellows in those regions this year. So again, we have the cost of living adjustment so that there are slight additional there will likely be additional stipend amounts going to fellows in those areas. But if you're not familiar with California, during the interview process, we can chat with you. There are also more housing opportunities in urban areas as opposed to if you're living in a rural area. Sometimes it's hard to find housing that is nearby your work location. So, I think it depends on what you're looking for. Pricing amounts definitely vary a lot from community to community, but in general, the Bay Area is probably the most expensive region to live in. So the next question is, can you elaborate on some projects a water resources fellow may be involved in? So Again, these are super varied, which is really great. We've had folks doing stormwater audits. We have folks doing leak detection and actually seeing what if pipes are losing water in the community and how much and at what cost. We have folks working on sustainable groundwater management Act plans and actually looking at doing long-term groundwater planning for their communities. So again, research, planning, and implementation, water projects touch on all of those. And if you're interested in learning more on the website, you can see all of our water projects from the last 2 years. And we've got short examples of what those are. And I encourage you to look through them because they are so varied. You can really get a good sense of the type of work opportunities in the water sector. The next question is, does CivicSpark help with finding housing for fellows? So while housing isn't provided, we work with fellows to do regional housing boards where you can connect with other incoming fellows to potentially do shared housing situations. We also connect you with former fellows. We've had situations where fellows leave their houses at the end of the service year and incoming fellows come in. Our regional staff can also work with you to help you find which neighborhoods might be most affordable to live in, where other fellows have lived in the past. And we also connect with other AmeriCorps programs who also are looking to find housing for their members at the same time. So we are pretty hands-on with fellows during the recruitment process, and we'll work with you to try to find housing before your service year starts. So a great question. So can community projects incorporate diversity needs based on the assigned region? So for example, if a service area is predominantly monolingual Spanish speakers, can projects be tailored to be inclusive or culturally relevant to them? Absolutely, and we really, really encourage that. That's something that a lot of our fellows work on. A lot of our projects in regions will be looking for fellows who can come in and speak to the needs of the community, actually be able to communicate with the community. So that's something that we're looking for, and in particular, when you're looking at volunteer engagement projects, that's an opportunity for you to really tailor that to the needs of the community. So that's a great question, and it's happening on both the project partner side and on the community engagement side, and I'm really excited to see you thinking about that and excited about that. And are there opportunities for fellows in the same region to meet up or work together on projects? Yes, definitely. Not necessarily, you won't be necessarily working together on your service projects, but there's a lot of regional collaboration on topic areas. So, for example, all of our energy fellows might get together and share best practices and resources. Our, same goes for our water fellows, our climate action planning fellows. All of our sector groups have calls and opportunities to meet and collaborate on projects. But also, we oftentimes see fellows working together on volunteer engagement projects within the region. So we want to make sure that there are opportunities for collaboration as much as possible. And so with that, I'm going to give it another minute to see if we have any other questions, but I want to pass it over to Ariadna to see if she can maybe give a little bit more information about what we're looking for in fellows. She's heads up our recruitment efforts and is really involved in all the interviewing and hiring of our fellows as well. So if you could add just a few comments to close us out, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely. So in the past, we've had people interested in CivicSpark who've asked kind of, what is it that you're looking for in a fellow? So I think Kristen mentioned this earlier, but we're definitely looking for people who are flexible, just because within working with local governments, things can change. You might be working on one project and funding may suddenly slow down and you have to work on a new project or a new initiative. So someone who's flexible, who's adaptable. We also want people who are optimistic, since this is a long, 11 months, depending on the region that you're in. You may be, you're the only fellow in one city, or sometimes, just the workload gets tough. So somebody who's optimistic, especially working in the sustainability field and seeing so many things going on, or, sometimes it can be very doom and gloom. So definitely keeping, high hopes and working towards a greater future. I think those are kind of our three biggest asks in fellows, and definitely someone who's resourceful. As Kristen mentioned, you're going to be potentially working a lot individually. You may have some guidance from site supervisors, but you may also be working on your own. So somebody who's resourceful, who takes initiative, and who's willing to, take that step forward and not just, wait for things to fall kind of into their hands. I think those are kind of the broader general things we're looking for in candidates as we're going through the interview process.
Great, thank you. And we got another question in as you were talking. Can fellows who work in similar regions collaborate on projects? So that's another good and interesting question. So one of the things that we've been exploring throughout the service years is more of a rural-urban connection, and we want to make sure that we're sharing best practices from rural region to rural region and urban region to urban region. So absolutely, and I think as you're working on projects and if you're running up against the issue of, how do I do community outreach in this type of community, and are there other fellows working on this? We can connect you with other fellows across the state who might be working in a similar type of area, similar geography, similar demographics, and they can talk to you a little bit more about the strategies they use to engage their community and get work done in their community. So that's a great question. We love opportunities for collaboration, and I think we've talked a lot about how much collaboration there is within regions, but we definitely want to see that cross-region collaboration as well. And we will help facilitate it. So excellent. With that, we don't have any more questions, but we have, actually we did just get one more question. Do you have preferences for types of references, professors, advisors, etc.? So references cannot be related to you, so no family members and no friends. Obviously friends are not related to you, but just making that clarification. We want somebody who can talk to the type of work that you can do. So I would say that somebody who was your direct supervisor at a previous job is probably a better reference than a professor who taught you as one out of 200 students in a class and might not be able to speak to your specific workload. So folks who know the type of work that you're capable of and could speak to how you would work and thrive in like a government setting where you are working on policy and planning and more hands-on projects. That's really what we're looking for. So I think we see TAs, we've seen professors, we've seen supervisors, we've really seen a variety of different things. Anything else that?
Big mix. Another note, as Kristen mentioned, just especially if you have, for example, a supervisor who's relevant to the field or the track that you're interested in. If you're interested in water, even if they're not your most recent supervisor, but if there's someone who can speak to your experience in a specific track, those would also be really great just to get to know kind of your knowledge in that area and how you fit in with that track.
That's a really great point. So the next question that we got is, how often do fellows travel to mandatory CivicSpark events, workshops, and trainings during the service year? So there are 3 main events that all fellows attend together. First is our orientation in September. The second is our mid-year retreat, which typically happens in mid-February. And then the third event is CivicSpark graduation, which happens in Sacramento in July. All of the travel, if you carpool, and all the lodging is provided for those events, so no worries about getting there from the different regions, and we coordinate carpools and travel for all the fellows, so you don't need to worry about that. In addition to those events, there are a couple of other ongoing things that fellows will be doing within their regions. The first of those is a regional training and meeting, which typically happens once a month. That'll just be about the 15 to 20 fellows in your region will all get together once a month to train, to share best practices, and to discuss some of the other events that are coming up that month. There are a number of leadership roles, for example, that fellows have in different regions. So regional meetings and trainings is your opportunity to talk about that, and also get to see all the other fellows once a month. And in addition, there are 4 service days a year that the dates of those are, again, provided at orientation, but those are just opportunities for you to go and do kind of pure service work. It doesn't have to be related to your project or anything, and your region will get together, again, 4 times a year to do those service projects, and those could be cleanup events, tree planting, working at a food bank, really a number of different opportunities. And like the mid-year gathering and orientation and graduation, travel to regional trainings and travel to service days is, again, that's all covered by CivicSpark, so you don't need to worry about the logistics of that. So you get to see the other fellows a good bit throughout the course of the service year. I think it's really important for camaraderie and team building to get to see everyone so regularly. So it can sometimes seem like a lot of events when we talk about it, but in general, fellows really like that opportunity to connect with folks throughout the year. And so the next question is, if you're offered employment by the agency a fellow is working in, do they have to complete the service year before accepting that? So like any position, any CivicSpark opportunity, you need to commit to the entire 11 months of service before accepting any other position. So when you come on, you sign a contract, so you cannot kind of quit and go do another job elsewhere throughout the year. And likewise, that's something that our agencies know. So if you're offered a position within CivicSpark, you do need to finish the term of service before you're able to start that full-time position with your host agency.
Which we've had fellows in the past, but as Kristen mentioned, it's been a discussion between the host agencies knowing this and the fellow knowing it as well, and waiting until they complete their full 11 months, 1,700 hours before beginning their term.
Yeah, and I think it's about 15% of our fellows actually continue working full-time at their host agency after the term of service. That's about right. So it's something that actually happens fairly regularly, that fellows are offered employment, and yeah, then you'll just start after your service term is completed. Great. So with that, I think those are all of the questions that we've received. My email address is up there again, and Ariadna will be following up with other resources. So if you happen to have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be more than happy to chat more. But thank you all so much for your time today, and really look forward to reading your applications in just a few weeks.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Bye-bye.